The soft hum of fluorescent lights echoed in the sterile white room as Sarah opened her eyes. She found herself lying on a cold, firm bed nestled within the stark confines of a psychiatric ward. This place had become both a refuge and a prison for Sarah. It was a sanctuary where she sought respite from the relentless storm that raged within her mind. Sarah's ongoing battle with mental health had been a grueling journey, filled with uphill struggles and treacherous pitfalls. The contours of her reality, once sharp and distinct, had blurred into an indistinguishable haze. The world around her seemed to oscillate between stark reality and a haunting distortion, a cruel mirror reflecting her fractured psyche. Despite the comfort of the familiar surroundings, a sense of foreboding clung to the air. As she awoke from her tormented slumber, the remnants of her recent psychotic breakdown lingered. One evening, a chill enveloped Sarah as whispers slithered through the air. An eerie sensation crept over her. The sterile white walls of the psychiatric ward seemed to close in, and the soft hum of fluorescent lights turned into a sinister symphony. The whispers weren't just sounds, they were echoes from her past, fragments of her psychotic episodes that had somehow found their way into her present. They were reminders of a time when her mind had been a battleground, and reality, a casualty. Sarah could feel the whispers wrapping themselves around her, their icy tendrils seeping into her thoughts. They were subtle at first, mere murmurs in the backdrop of her mind. But as the night grew darker, so did the whispers. They grew louder, more insistent, like a relentless tide battering against the shores of her sanity. Each whisper was a cruel mimicry of her thoughts, a distorted reflection of her fears. They whispered tales of horrors that seemed all too familiar. They whispered about the grotesque figures that lurked in the corners of her mind, the twisted manifestations of her own torment. As the whispers intensified, so did Sarah's fear. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drum echoing through the silence. Her breaths came in short, ragged gasps, each one a desperate plea for calm. But calm was a stranger in this nightmarish reality. And then, just as suddenly as they had begun, the whispers subsided, but their absence was not a relief. It was a void, a deafening, ringing silence that was far more terrifying. It was in this silence that Sarah felt the boundaries of her reality begin to blur. The hard lines that separated sanity from madness, reality from delusion, began to fray. The whispers were harbingers of a terrifying possibility. A possibility that her psychosis was not confined to the recesses of her mind, but was leaking into her reality, distorting it, threatening to shatter it. Panic clawed at her consciousness as she felt the boundaries of reality fray. The turning point came when Sarah discovered a journal hidden in the recesses of her room. This wasn't just any journal, it was a chronicle of her mind's journey into the abyss of madness. The pages, a canvas of erratic scribbles and frantic thoughts, bore the weight of Sarah's mental struggle. Each entry, a testament to her torment. It was a mirror into her psyche, reflecting the chaos within. As Sarah leafed through the pages, she found herself drawn into a vortex of revelations. She recognized the words, the phrases, the descriptions. They were a raw, unfiltered mirror of her own experiences. It was like watching a movie of her life, only this was a horror film, and she was the protagonist trapped in a relentless, nightmarish loop. The journal became a Pandora's box, unleashing a whirlwind of memories and emotions. The more she read, the more she relived her past, her breakdowns, her fears. It was as if time had folded onto itself, merging past and present into a terrifying tableau of mental torment. Sarah's world began to spin as she grappled with the reality of her situation. She could feel her heart start to race and her breath becoming short and shallow. The journal was not just a record of her past, it was a haunting prophecy of her present and future. It predicted things, horrible things. The malevolent whispers, the grotesque figures, the twisted reality, they were all there, chronicled in her own handwriting. It was a chilling realization that sent a shiver down her spine. As she delved deeper into the journal, Sarah saw a pattern emerging. The entries were not random, they were a roadmap to her psychosis, a guide to the network of her mind. Each word, each sentence, each paragraph was a piece of the puzzle, a clue to the madness that had consumed her. The journal was no longer just a book, it was a testament to her struggle, a beacon in the darkness. But it was also a reminder of the terrifying reality she was living. As she turned the last page, Sarah was gripped with an overwhelming sense of fear. Sarah knew then, she was not just fighting against her mind, she was battling a force that had transcended the confines of her mental breakdowns and was manifesting itself in the tangible world. Sarah sought guidance from a fellow patient, Alex. a sense of camaraderie forged in the crucible of shared experiences. Alex, much like Sarah, had been a captive of his mind, his reality distorted by the same malevolent force that had haunted Sarah. Their shared delusions painted a terrifying tableau of their intertwined psychoses. As they navigated the maze of their fractured minds, they found themselves caught in a vicious cycle of whispers and hallucinations. The voices intensified, growing louder and more persistent, gnawing at their sanity. They whispered ghastly secrets, echoing the same horrors that seeped from the pages of Sarah's journal. The voices seemed to orchestrate a symphony of hallucinatory horrors, each note a chilling testament to their shared torment. The world around them began to shift and warp under the weight of their shared psychosis. Walls stretched and contorted into grotesque forms, shadows danced with an eerie life of their own, and the sterile white of the psychiatric ward bled into a swirling maelstrom of darkness. Reality as they knew it was being torn apart, the threads fraying under the relentless onslaught of their shared delusions. The boundaries between the tangible world and the realm of their psychosis blurred. The malevolent force that had been confined to the shadows of their minds seemed to seep into their reality, its presence palpable, its influence undeniable. It was no longer just a figment of their disturbed minds, but a tangible entity that threatened to consume their reality. They found themselves standing on the precipice of a perpetual nightmare, their sanity teetering on the edge. Their battle was far from over. As they stood on the brink, they knew they had to confront the malevolent force that lurked in the shadows, or risk being lost forever in the depths of the delusions. Sarah stood at the precipice of her fear and uncertainty, her heart pounding like a drum echoing through the void. The whispers, once fragmented, now united in a haunting chorus, their sinister melody reverberating off the cold, sterile walls. Alex stood by her side, his presence a beacon of hope in the engulfing darkness. She held the journal in her trembling hands, its worn pages rustling like whispers from the past. The entries, once nonsensical, now held the key to her liberation. They were not just ramblings of a fractured mind, but a roadmap through her psychosis. Drawing a deep breath, she began to recite the revelations, her voice wavering but resolute. The words echoed through the room, their truth piercing the darkness like a ray of light. Each sentence was a direct confrontation to the malevolent force, a challenge to the twisted reality it had woven. The whispers faltered, their once harmonious chorus disrupted by the undeniable truth. The grotesque figures, once menacing, began to recoil, their forms flickering like shadows against the onslaught of her revelations. With every word, Sarah felt the oppressive weight lifting off her shoulders, replaced by a sense of empowerment. She was no longer a captive of her own mind. As she uttered the final revelation, a truth so profound it shattered the illusions that had held her captive. The room trembled, the walls echoing with the impact of her words. The malevolent force, once a formidable presence, now stood cornered, its power waning under the illumination of truth. It recoiled, its form diminishing into the shadows until it was nothing more than a flicker in the darkness. And then, in a final act of defiance, Sarah took a step forward, her voice steady, her resolve unshaken. She looked at where the figure had once stood, tall and ominous, her eyes gleaming with newfound determination. As the first rays of dawn, Sarah and Alex emerged from the nightmarish depths, their minds scarred but liberated. They had navigated the treacherous labyrinth of their shared psychosis, confronted the malevolent force, and emerged victorious, albeit not unscathed. The psychiatric ward had transformed back into a sanctuary once again. The sterile white walls, once a canvas for their fears, now stood as a testament to their resilience. The soft hum of fluorescent lights now served as a comforting reminder of reality. The medical staff resumed their routines, their smiles a stark contrast to the horrors that had transpired. Their obliviousness to the ordeal was both a blessing and a curse. They could not comprehend the mental battles fought and won within these walls, nor the lingering shadows that threatened to rise again. Sarah, bearing the weight of her recovered sanity, looked back at the room that had become a crucible of her fears. But instead of seeing the near-empty room, she saw bright red eyes staring at her through the shadows, whispering how her time was almost up.